One, there we are, and
we're live.
Yes, we are. Yes, and we typically wait just a couple seconds here until we get one or two people on, and so the beauty of these videos is that we got some people on here now.
Good,
so
we'll
start going.
Fantastic.
Thank you for joining this edition of Your Future Mayor. I'm Steve Schreiber, community journalist and entrepreneur, one of Cedar Rapids' biggest fans and biggest cheerleaders. I chose to do this series for a couple of reasons. And one is for my own curiosity, is that it's really hard to understand each of the candidates and their platforms. It's also it's hard to connect, and so not everybody gets to have coffee with the candidate. And although there are great forums out there, this is just one more way that you can learn about the mayoral candidates in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. There are 8 people running for mayor, and some of these people you may not have heard of. And so, again, this is a good opportunity to find out more about them. Before we get into the interview, I got to thank Russ Fagel for doing this great graphic for us, Hear from Your Future Mayor. Thank you, Russ. And right now, if you are logged on, which we've got quite a few people, can you share this or whatever you need to do to let other people know that you're watching so that we can get as many views as possible? Yes. The great news is that each of these videos has had somewhere between 500 and 1,000 views in the last week. And so whether you're here tonight or in the future, these will be online. So today we have with us Scott Olson, who's born and raised in Iowa. He's a registered architect for 45 years and commercial real estate broker. He's been on the city council since 2011 and chairs the infrastructure committee. And he's got a long resume and a lot of other stuff, so we're looking forward to hearing about it.
Thank you. Thanks for asking. It's greatly appreciated.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Yes.
So these questions that I'm going to ask you are, they were all submitted by people on Facebook.
Yes.
And so these are all citizens of Cedar Rapids wondering these things about our future mayor. This is a pretty important one we're starting off with. What do you order on your pizza?
Well, I'm in a rut along with my wife. We have 3 things that we always order on our pizza. It's usually a thin crust pizza. Mm-hmm. It's pepperoni, hamburger, and green olive. And we either cook it at home, Papa Murphy's, or wherever we order from. And we do order from many of the restaurants here in town. We always order the same thing. And the good news is we have a lot of great pizza in this town. We do. That's an interesting combination too. Yeah, green olives. I love them. All right, so here's another one. There's a growing fashion movement in Cedar Rapids. Yes. So the question is, who are you wearing? Who? Well, my sport coat is from Yonkers. It's Austin Reed.
Okay.
So, but the interesting part of how I dress is that I'm partially colorblind. And so during the week, I used to wear just solid colors, whites, blues, solid sports coats, because I was afraid of mixing things that I would have bad color combinations. So my wife thought I was kind of boring. So then she puts out every evening for what I wear the next day, different color combinations that I normally wouldn't wear. And so it has an outfit. But the big change is that I now have patterned socks, the new thing. I've gotten rid of my black socks, my brown socks, my tan socks. So they all have patterns, different themes of the year. So tonight, and my socks I have on, which I won't show at the camera, show the wave seen in the ocean with shark fins. And the reason it's showing that is because if you went to Shark Tank, you would win because of your success. So I had to wear those socks tonight. And plus, I'm probably entering here a Shark Tank a little bit with these questions. You're going to get grilled. So you'll see me, people comment on my socks.
Yeah, that's great. You can express yourself with your socks. I love it. I love it. So the last real kind of personal question, and then we'll get into the city politics.
Sure.
Is what was it like growing up? What was your household like here in Iowa?
Well, my father was a music teacher, and that's why we moved here to Cedar Rapids. He was an instrumental music teacher, which allowed all of my brothers and I to be into music and a variety of instruments. My mother was an administrative assistant and worked for Lefebvre and then Life Investors. They were avid golfers, And so all of us played golf. My brother is a golf pro who's in the Minnesota Golf Hall of Fame, the Iowa Golf Hall of Fame, and the World Golf Hall of Fame. And so been very successful in the golfing market. But they were parents that headed us all in the right direction. They believed in education. They believed in allowing us to be each of them, my two brothers and I are each different. And so they were fabulous parents.
Nice.
And so they're both passed now, and I miss both my mom and dad. And so, you know, we're very fortunate to have had great parents like that. And so it was a very normal household and a very loving household.
Nice, nice. All right, so we're going to get into some nitty-gritty questions here.
Sure.
Jump right into it. What is the role of government in economic development, and what are your views on TIF and other financial incentives for private or publicly traded businesses?
Well, we have now our own economic development department. That was something City Manager Jeff Pomerantz established, and it has paid dividends, because what it does is allow us to get a feel for what are the needs of our businesses, both new ones that may be looking at Cedar Rapids and others that are already existing, because most of the growth is from existing businesses. And so what we have done is then we have our set of incentives and programs that are specific to Cedar Rapids. And I was one of the people that got us to finally publish that on our website. So now we are competitive. We don't offer anything different than Marion or Robbins or Iowa City. All the incentives are very similar. So really, when somebody's looking at our area, we wanted to make sure that we were business friendly, that we were open to business, that we responded, and that we were competitive. The purpose of an incentive, there's only two incentives that the city of Cedar Rapids has under state law, and that's TIFs and urban revitalization. And so we're very sensitive to, and I've been a proponent of being very cautious with our TIFs, and have voted no on some. And the reason is if you give away too much in the form of TIFs, it can screw up the real estate market. And so we just had our Cedar Rapids analyzed by Iowa State University. They analyzed all the cities in the state of Iowa. We were number 7 in the use of TIFs. And we have about 4.5% of our tax base that has some form of a TIF, not 100% necessarily, but some TIF, compared to an Iowa City or compared to a North Liberty or Des Moines, where they have 30, 40, 50%.
Okay.
And so we know there's going to be changes because there are cities using TIFs. We have used in 2015, 21 projects that got TIFs. Last year in Des Moines, they had $300 million worth of TIFs.
Right.
We've never, we're in the tens of millions of TIFs. So we've been very sensitive, very frugal with it. And one thing that people do not know about TIFs is first, whoever asks for them has to prove they need it. Then they have to negotiate, once we determine there's a need, to close the gap to make a project happen. Then we get to sign an agreement, we negotiate that. And because they're asking for money, we get to put rules in that are not normal. So we can put things on it, how a building looks, how many trees it has, how you park in that building. We get a chance to negotiate in that because we're putting money in.
Nice.
And then they have to, once they sign the agreement, they've got to build it. Then they've got to meet all the metrics, whether that's value, jobs, whatever the metrics are. Then they have to pay their property taxes. And then from the TIF, they get a piece of their property tax back. So with a TIF, there's only one exception that we did differently, which was the first loan at Westdale. Otherwise, all our TIFs, they have to build it, pay their taxes, and then they get a piece of that back.
Gotcha.
So it's encouraging and it's filling the gaps.
Yep.
But TIFs have to be used prudently. And I think the city of Cedar Rapids is doing a good job. We need to continue doing a good job of being a model for the state of Iowa on how TIFs should be used appropriately and only used when they're needed.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. So on the, I'm not sure if this falls into infrastructure, which you know a lot about, but what are your thoughts on green spaces, and specifically, how do you plan to fund the greenway plans already in place?
We have a lot of greenways coming along because of our flood system that's coming down. We have areas in Time Check, we have areas here in the Newbo area and Czech Village that are scheduled to become parks, which is part of the effort to mitigate future damage if there is future flooding before we get the flood system built. And So the main way of doing that is going to be, we're going to have to make a financial commitment, because when we do parks, and we have more parks than any city in Iowa. I never realized the number. We have 95 parks in this city.
I like that.
There's a lot of cities that have maybe 5, 10. We have 95 already. And now we're creating 2 mega parks, one in Czech Village and one in the Time Check area. We do not have we can't fund that from the regular budget. And so when we get ready to get the flood wall in place and those areas are ready, we're probably going to have to do a bonding system like we're doing for the Cedar Lake project and the bridge project down here. We've committed 5 years of $1 million a year, and it's going to be bonded in our capital improvement program. The same thing will happen. We will fund that through bonds because we're creating parks that are going to be used for 100 years.
Yep. Yeah.
The second part of that is we got to maintain them.
Yeah.
And so once we keep adding parks, and those will be 2 mega parks, along with Cedar Lake, which once it's done, it becomes a city park. All those trails and everything, we have to maintain the trails. And once we do something along the levee and the bridges that go to Mount Trashmore, we have to maintain that bridge. Yep. And so we will have to increase our park funding, our budget for the maintenance staff, because some of the complaints I get are we're not mowing enough at times when we have that. And so we're going to have to, it's nice to have the park, but if it looks bad, then it doesn't send the right signal. And so 2 parts, we're going to have to fund it through bonding, which does impact the taxpayer. That's how we build it. And then we've got to fund it to maintain it properly. So we'll need to do it. And I feel very confident that we'll do it right.
Okay. Nice. All right. Let's just talking about funding here. What are your opinions of the traffic cameras?
The traffic camera is an interesting issue. And of all the cities in Iowa, Cedar Rapids has done it the way it should be done. And the reason for that is we did the traffic cameras to make that S-curve safer. And from the day the traffic cameras were put in to today, they've been shut off now, but we didn't have a fatality. Our accidents dropped by 50%. Our speed on that S-curve dropped dramatically. And the only people, or the most of the people, I've gotten 3 tickets. I mean, I was late for a meeting and got up close to that 67 miles an hour early on until I got used to it. And the people from out of town that are speeding through our city. Now, what's happened, we kept the traffic cameras on after we quit doing the ticketing or the citations. And the speed ramped up almost immediately. And there was a guy that I got passed on the S-curve here 2 weeks ago that had to be going 90 miles an hour through our city, going through the curves, weaving in and out of traffic. And if you've ever been by an accident there, and we still have accidents on the curve, they have to bring out 5 to 6 police cars to station them around to get traffic to slow down so that our first responders, our fire department, and our ambulance services are not hit. And so when we pull 5 to 6 police cars to service an accident on the interstate, that means they're leaving the neighborhoods where they should be patrolling, and they're there for hours. And so, yes, it's been a revenue stream. We may lose that revenue stream. We're going to know. We've won every court case so far, but we're up to the big cases now where, it may be declared. We did everything the state said, then they changed the rules. So we have the best case for safety. We have the numbers. We'll just wait. If it happens, it happens. If we get them back, great. If we don't, we'll just have to put more enforcement on those S-curves to make sure we don't have, speeders that are going to cause accidents.
All right. It is interesting.
Yes, it is.
Crazy.
It's amazing.
All right. So let's jump right into casinos. Are you in favor of a casino in Cedar Rapids? If yes, why? And also, which one of the proposed plans do you support?
Well, I voted for the referendum to, pursue a license when that referendum came up. I was one of the majority that voted for that. I am not a gambler. And I was excited about all the local investors that came through for the first scheme, the first mega thing on the west side of the river. I was very excited about that because it had a lot of potential, it was owned locally. And so we signed an agreement at that time to support that effort, whether they got a license or not. So the stance of the city council has been, our agreement is in place to support their 2 proposals, which we have done in this second round. which is the one on the west side of the river, which is the largest one, the one where we rebuild a parking ramp, which is their second scheme. The surprise scheme that came out of the blocks was the scheme where my office is, and that's the Wild Rose. So if they build that, I lose my office on top of the Skogman building. And so, it would be, that's, has a good developer. Steve Emerson has been fabulous for the community. Hunter Parks has been fabulous for the community. So they're local, but technically it's operated and owned by a group outside from Des Moines.
Okay.
And so personally, I don't think the decision is going to be any different, because I don't think the market has changed and there's going to be what they call, in quotes, cannibalization. It's a shame, but that's the way the system is set up. The concerns that have recently been expressed, which I was not in favor of, was the negative approach we took against Wild Rose. Because I felt that, they're making an effort on behalf to do something for this city and to bring the jobs, the tax base, the entertainment value, because it will get used. We'd have the use of the arena, the use of the hotel. The city would definitely benefit from the economic push of that casino. But unfortunately, there was some negative tone there. They thought things were rigged. I don't believe that. But we have an agreement. And so as a member of the city council and the mayor and the city manager, we have supported the original group because that's our agreement. It goes for another 2 or 3 years. And so if it happens, it happens. I don't think it will. But if it does happen, then we'll work with whichever group to maximize the benefit to the city.
Gotcha. All right. So speaking of benefit in the city, we've heard from people that it's impossible to find help. So how do we create a stronger labor force in this town?
Well, I think what we're doing is heading that direction. We are creating neighborhoods like this one. Mm-hmm. We're having businesses open like this one. We're creating downtown housing. I've co-chaired that for 10 years with various people. And the housing that's being built in this area and throughout the city, as soon as it's built, it's filled. And we're getting new types of housing. And so we're creating what people want. They want to live where this action is. We're expanding, becoming a more bike-friendly city. I sat at a coffee shop that I normally sit at beside yours. And I had a guy ride up to me, works at Rockwell Collins. He rides every day to Ely, or once a month to Ely and back. He stops for a cup of coffee, goes home, showers, goes to work. And I asked him, what kind of trails do you like? Does he like the protected lane? What does he like about the trails? And we talked about the different systems we're experimenting with. But the important thing he said, Scott, we just hired a young engineer at Rockwell Collins. He had 5 job offers. Many of those job offers were in large cities. But he picked Cedar Rapids, Iowa, because we were the most bike-friendly city compared to the other 4 job offers.
Love it.
And so what we're seeing is we're trying to attract that younger worker that's looking for retail opportunities. They want to have different places to shop. They want to have places to bike. They want to have activities going. Mm-hmm. They want to do things that are fun and live in the downtown area. And so it's hard for a lot of the older residents to understand why we're doing that. But we have to remain competitive because we're competing against all of these other cities that have, in quotes, these things. We're getting there. We're moving up the rankings. And I use the example of we just got ranked last month for the 3rd year in a row as the best city in America. I'm talking the best city in America to raise a child.
There we go.
3 years in a row. It's never happened. And we've also been ranked as the best place for a young professional to get rich. And for new grads. We've got some wonderful rankings that we are starting to get. And it's amazing. That's what people are looking at. They go check on the websites and see where is their affordable housing? Where is their downtown housing? We now, as one of the efforts of our committee, we have a website you can go to and look at all the projects that exist and click on them and go to that, or all the new projects that are planned. And so we can show all these different types of housing that are here. It's great. Exciting. And that's what people are looking for, is those opportunities.
You're right. That's great. I mean, I raised my kids here. I mean, I could have gone anywhere.
When you look at it, raising kids, good schools, quality of life. And so it's very exciting.
Definitely. So on that quality of life issue and crime, do you have any ideas to reduce the gang and gun violence that we've seen in Cedar Rapids?
Well, it's a subject that happens in my neighborhood, which is out on the west side. It happens in several neighborhoods. We know who they are. We have to catch them in the act. We have to get in a different neighborhood, people living in these neighborhoods, to trust the police department to give us information, whether it's anonymously or helping us find those people. But we are starting to have an impact. We started in 2016 the PCAT team, which is the Police Community Action Team. It's a team of 5 officers. The headquarters is based out of our new substation that's there across from Co. And they're out and they focus on areas. That's all they do, is they don't respond to other calls. They just concentrate in those areas where we're seeing those incidents, and they watch and they track, and then they catch it. Yep. And we had just had some recent announcements on a murder that was back in 2016. We caught the guy in Chicago. We're catching everybody. It takes time and it takes resources. And so our crime rate is dropping. It's dropping in Wellington Heights because of what Auni is doing, and Four Oaks and Total Child by converting from rental housing to more single-family housing. We're starting to see improvements, but we're still having those drive-bys because apparently what it is the way you solve a dispute anymore among young people that come in is that you don't meet somewhere and have a little rumble.
Right.
You just drive by their house and fire some shots off, and they drive by your house.
Yeah.
It's a shame. But by law, we have to catch them. So we know who they are, and this will work. It's only been in place for 1 year, but we're already having a difference in the number of drive-by shootings and the number of murders has dropped precipitously. And a lot of that is this new effort that the city's put in place, and it's working. Now, are we there yet? No.
Right.
And we have to involve more of the community because there are neighborhoods that are still concerned, about crime and issues. We have to get them involved and make them part of the team.
Yep.
And if we do that, build the trust, give the police department adequate resources, we will make a difference. And we are a very safe city, but one murder is one too many.
Yep.
One drive-by is one too many. Are we ever going to get to zero? That would be our goal.
Right.
But of a city of our size, we are so low compared to many other cities. It's, we need to be, and that's why we got some of these high rankings, because we are considered a very safe city, and we get high rankings for good places to live because of our level of crime.
That's great. So jump into education here.
Yes.
This is a specific question about collaborating with schools, but what plans do you have to collaborate with the CR school district to increase student achievement and provide future-ready options for high school graduates?
Well, this is something I'm kind of passionate about. My father was a teacher, and so I watched what he did and how he taught and his frustrations, and that was back, in the 80s and into the 90s. Things have really changed now. So one of the things, I've had the privilege of working with the school district and the school board for about 10 years as a consultant, and I help them dispose of their flood damaged properties, and I continue to work for them when they have assignments. But it's allowed me to build a very strong relationship with the Cedar Rapids School District staff and board. Also, I have designed schools in several of these districts and know all the superintendents and participate in their activities. We need to have a regular dialogue because, as an example, the Cedar Rapids School District is getting ready to announce a new master plan that's going to dramatically impact our neighborhoods in Cedar Rapids, because they're talking about some of the older buildings being closed and then building newer facilities on some of the larger campuses and going to less buildings. Well, the closure of a school in a neighborhood, which we through the Roots program, we were able to grow back Taylor after all the flood damaged houses were removed, and that school is still open and growing. Harrison is growing because of all we've done with that. Well, we don't want to have those, or a couple of the schools, or one of the schools that's on the list for potential closing down the road. We need to make sure that we're in direct communication with that plan and making sure we're working together. Because the new plan, as an example, for the new buildings is to make them each a community center besides a school. Yep. Well, we're working to get a senior center. We're working to get more rec centers. Well, we don't want to duplicate.
Yep.
We need to team. So to me, the mayor meets on a regular basis with the school board. I don't think it's frequent enough. I think we should have regular meetings where we just meet for an hour, talk about what are the issues, and then the school districts are finally emphasizing you can get a good education by not necessarily going to college. Get that 2-year degree at a Kirkwood or other type of institution. go to our fantastic labor apprentice programs. We have some of the most spectacular labor apprentice programs in the state.
Yep.
And they're filling up now because in my business, which was architecture, a lot of these people that I worked with over the years building buildings are retiring. And so we need to have people coming up because our building trades are important to providing cost-effective construction by having trained workers. And so we need to, it's all important. It's tied together where they're doing the schools. It's tied together what services are providing and then where they're pursuing. And so finally, counselors are now directing people to these apprenticeship programs, and they're filling up. And they've got lots of people. I'm very excited about that. We have a ways to go, but we're heading the right direction, and that's going to make a difference in in our future as a city.
So let's say, so I'm going to merge these two last questions here.
Sure.
Well, these two questions are one's streets and the other is housing. And so how do we handle, because we've got about 5 minutes left, a comprehensive plan for affordable housing merged with having streets that can handle that?
I'm going to take this two separate.
Okay. All right.
Affordable housing. I've got a blog that I put online because we're seeing groups that are having to go out and try to create and find ways to create affordable housing. And when we mean affordable housing, we mean where somebody's between 30 and 50% of the median income. Whereas we have a lot of projects built through these low income tax credits, projects all over. We've got 3 or 4 more coming that are called light tech projects, but it's 80% or below. It's that lower area that we don't have the housing for. And so I had a 3-point program. Number one, we have an affordable housing commission that's in the books. I was on it. Mayor Cannon appointed me to that commission. I was its chairperson for 9 of the 10 years. And then after Canny left, a future mayor decided we didn't need an affordable housing commission and never appointed anybody, but it's still on the books. So one of the first things I'm going to do is to reestablish the Affordable Housing Commission, because we have people that are interested and concerned about housing. Put that on as a city commission. Number 2 is to create a position in city government that person in the housing department, their only responsibility is to work with these agencies and help them get grants and stuff to create affordable housing. The third thing is to create an incentive program where we put aside $500,000 a year in the city budget to use in incentives for people to build affordable housing. And that's been done in other cities in Iowa, where if you build an affordable housing unit and then show us the lease, you get a credit. You get $5,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is to use $10,000 per unit to create them. So that helps the market system build those houses. And then finally, it's just to create the synergy of communicating and going out there and making things happen by bringing the community together to look at all, because we have great nonprofits that have got super ideas, but it's always down to that funding arm and how do they get together and work together. Now, the new program that City Manager Jeff Pomerantz is working on is we're going to have our own neighborhood finance corp. And it's between the city's putting $1 million in, banks are putting $2.5 million. Kyle Skogman is working to raise another $2 million. That will be used as a financing mechanism in grants and low interest loans to create affordable housing. It's been very successful in Des Moines, and that we've negotiated. The city manager has a package where the Des Moines staff will manage our program, so we don't have to hire anybody. And so that's very close to happening. So you put all 4 of those things together, we can make a difference.
That's huge.
Streets. We have a plan in place. It's working. It's designed to try and make the greatest impact out of the $180 million we're going to have over 10 years. The program has repairs, maintenance, and total rebuilds. 60% of the money at the end of 10 years will be spent in residential areas, 40% on arterial streets. And so we will touch, of the 600 miles in the city, at the end of 10 years, under the current plan that's being established and modified every year. As streets get better, streets get worse, we adjust the street plan every 2 years, actually. And so we have a plan that rates our streets and maximizes the money. Plus, we're now using city staff to do projects, which is saving us a ton of money. And so we have spent, by the end of this year, $58 million on about 100 and some projects in this city. $58 million. In the 10 years prior to our local option sales tax for streets, we've only spent $50 million. We bonded for it, and so we're paying on. So we've already in 4 years spent $10 million more than they spent in the previous 10
had
years.
a lot
So
of work to
we are so far behind.
Yeah.
It's not going to get done in 10 years, and it's probably going to take another 10 to get caught back up. But the good news is, of the option sales tax, it's more than we projected. Now we're up to $19 million a year. 30% of that comes from people living outside of Cedar Rapids that are spending sales tax money. So we are having the people that come and work here use our streets when they buy gas, when they buy anything at a convenience store. We get a piece of that action, and they're helping pay for our streets. So I'm very excited. Yeah. And the system is set up to be non-political. In other words, we have rating systems, we have lasers on the streets, we have rankings through software programs, through our staff, because it's not everybody I get my emails that their street is the worst in Cedar Rapids. And so what we're trying to do is take it out of the political arena and put it into a logical, so that our buck works. And if we do this right, we'll touch 150 miles of the 600 miles of streets in the first 10 years. 30% of all traffic will be on one of those improved streets at the end of the first 10 years. And our overall street condition will have improved. And if we can prove that in 10 years to the voters, we hope they'll vote to renew it for another 10.
Nice.
Yes.
All right. Last question. Why are you more qualified than the other candidates for Cedar Rapids mayor?
Well, I bring a unique background to the table. Besides my caring for this city's been fantastic to me. As an architect, I went to high school here. When I was at Iowa State, I worked back here during the summers. As an architect, as in real estate, having the opportunity to join in and work on commissions, 50 commissions and boards, this city has been fantastic. And people say, well, why do you want to do that job? You just get picked on all the time. Yeah. Well, the reason I want to is I've, over the years, have a tremendous track record of working and participating in committees. Because one thing I've learned, it can't be just one person. It can't be just the mayor. He has to provide the leadership, but he has to build consensus. And he has to put together a team. Well, in the case of the city council, the mayor is one of 9. He has to build consensus among the council so that we can get things done. We do not want to bring the partisan politics that we see in Washington, D.C., where nothing's getting done. We watched the decimation of collective bargaining, a variety of things at the state level. It was embarrassing. We do not want that here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And in my 6 years on the city council, I've never had a situation that I can remember where the politic part came into play in what we were discussing. We all serve on committees. I've been on the Finance Committee, Development Committee, Infrastructure Committee. We respect what that committee does. We respect what the individual council meeting. We don't always vote the same, but we respect each other. And if we can continue that, having a nonpartisan, hardworking city council, because whether you're looking at streets, sewer, water, safety, it doesn't make any difference whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're an independent. All of us are impacted by those city functions. And so we don't want to bring that into the table. And so I've got the leadership skills, I've got the experience. I'm willing to commit with my time I have available, because I know it's going to take time to be mayor, to give back to the city for 4 years. And that's my gift, I hope, to Cedar Rapids. And I will show the kind of leadership I think that's necessary so that we do not become stagnant, that we continue the positive things that are happening in this city, like what you're doing and what other areas are doing. And we can just say, I'm proud of the, I hand out my national ranking sheet. I'm proud of this city.
Cedar Rapids.
I wear my pin on every suit. My All-America city. We couldn't be more proud of it.
Right. Awesome. Scott Olson, thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate all your success. You've been a fabulous person for our community, and there's bigger and better things I know that you'll be looking at down the road.
Thanks. Thank you. All right. Hang on. So, all right, mark your calendars. October 12th is the candidate forum at the Cedar Rapids Library, but also keep an eye out for all the other forums throughout the city. Get to know these guys, throughout this process. We have less than a month to go until we vote.
And vote.
Yes, and we got to get out and vote.
We got to vote.
This is it. This is it. We have to. So the election is November 7th, and this is it. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
All right.